Welcome into OutKick the show. It is the Monday edition of the program, and right off the top, so all of you know for college football and NFL season, Monday's show, OutKick show, all college football. It's all I'll talk about unless absolute insanity happens. And then Tuesday is NFL. And then if you all you care about is football. If you are out there and you're like, I don't care what else is going on in the world, all I care about is college football and the NFL, and there are tens of millions of you in the country of that perspective. Monday, OutKick the show, college football. Tuesday, OutKick the show, NFL. And then obviously Thursday with Kelly Stewart is our gambling special. That's what's going to happen. Okay, so that gives you the September, the October, the November running on through throughout the course of the season. That is where we are headed, all right? So let me start with this provocative somewhat thesis. I think the SEC may be stronger 1-16 than it has ever been in the history of college football. If you look at the overall numbers, the SEC is better against major out-of-conference opponents than anyone else in college football. Early in the season, I know, but two big storylines that support that happened on Saturday night. That was Oklahoma handled Michigan, which we're going to talk about, and Arizona State lost at Mississippi State on a crazy final game scenario. After Mississippi State blew a 17-0 lead. To their credit, the Sun Devils fought back to take a 20-17 lead. Also, Vanderbilt went on the road and outscored Virginia Tech in the second half 34-0. I'm not sure that Vanderbilt has ever outscored a Power 4 conference opponent or a Power 5 conference opponent 34-0 and a half on the road in the history of the program. I don't think they've ever done it in my life. They might have done it 50 years ago, but my life's a pretty extensive period of time, and I have a pretty good recall of all the games that I have seen over the years. I've never seen Vanderbilt dominate in the second half. Diego Pavia and company, Clark Lee, has built a culture there, and they're pretty good, and all of that leads into this argument. I think the SEC 1-16 may well be better than it has ever been before in the history of the football conference. Now, obviously, it's relatively new to be 1-16, but just think about this. The 16th best team in the SEC was expected to be Mississippi State this year. Mississippi State just beat the highest-ranked Big 12 team head-to-head. That is pretty unbelievable. Now, I know the Big 12 is still uncertain, unclear exactly how it's going to shake out. We'll get into that a little bit. Maybe it's the case that Arizona State is not actually the best team in the Big 12, but they were the highest-ranked team in the Big 12 coming into this weekend, and they lost to the expected 16th best SEC football team. That's pretty extraordinary. Congrats to Jeff Lebby. All right, let's go into the biggest game of the night. I'm going to get to Billy Napier. I'm going to talk about all of the fallout that's coming there. But let's just actually start with the biggest game of Saturday night, which was Oklahoma beating Michigan. The Sooners and John Napier, their quarterback, are orders of magnitude better on the offensive side of the ball than they were with Jackson Arnold as the quarterback last year. So let me hit some of this data from exactly how good Napier was. He reminded me of a Tim Tebow-like playmaker, except I think Napier is even bigger than Tebow was back in the day. So Napier passed for 270 yards, ran for 74. He was basically the entire Oklahoma offense. Carried the ball 19 times. Obviously, you cannot carry the ball 19 times in the SEC and make it through a season unless you're a warrior like Tim Tebow that is basically made out of steel. And so, to me, the question for Oklahoma going forward is Sooners should be 5-0. They should be 5-0, I believe is the math. And then they run into an absolute buzzsaw Listen to how Oklahoma finishes the season, okay? They have Texas, obviously, for the big rivalry game every year, at South Carolina, Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at Alabama, Missouri, and LSU. 7 straight probable top 25 games for Oklahoma to finish the season with. And I'm going to talk about the Florida schedule and how brutal that is. But let me just repeat that. Oklahoma should be 5-0. Should be 5-0 when Texas comes to town. But then they have this murderer's row. Texas, at South Carolina, Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at Alabama, Missouri, and LSU. That's as tough of a 7-game stretch as has ever existed in college football. And if you presume, as I do, that 10-2 is the ticket-punching number that gets you into the 12-team playoff, maybe 9-3 with the caliber of quality that may exist in the SEC and some of the other moving parts here. But that's an unbelievable schedule for Oklahoma. So they probably have to go 5-2 after starting off 5-0. I think that's going to be a challenge. Not because I don't think Oklahoma is good, just because it would be insanely difficult for anybody to go 5-2 in that 7-game stretch. Contrast it with Michigan. Okay, what did we learn from Michigan? Bryce Underwood was about what I expected. The reason why I told you that I believed Oklahoma would win this game by double digits was I expected for Bryce Underwood to look like he did, a freshman quarterback who had never played in an environment like out there before. I thought he made 3 or 4 throws that were really good. In the second half, there was basically nothing that he did. He hit one big pass play, which credit was a phenomenal catch on the top of a helmet. Wasn't a particularly well-thrown ball. Michigan popped one 75-yard run to start the second half. They were incredibly fortunate that Oklahoma was sloppy and turned the ball over a couple of times, which kept Oklahoma from being able to pull away. Bryce Underwood finished 9 for 24, 142 yards, no touchdowns. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. He did not, to me, look particularly elusive when it came to just cutting and running. But he's a big guy with a big arm that throws a really nice ball downfield. I think he's going to be a very good quarterback. I don't think Michigan is a playoff team this year. In fact, even with Michigan's weak schedule, and this could get shifted because obviously top 25 continues to evolve. Right now, Michigan has one top 25 team left on their schedule, Ohio State, the final week of the season. That's unbelievable. I just ran through the 7-game meat grinder that Oklahoma has to face. Michigan has, with 7 probably straight top 25 matchups, Michigan has one Big Ten top 25 game right now. Now, maybe some of these other teams are going to end up in the top 25, but they don't play Oregon. They don't play Penn State. They set up the Big Ten schedule to try to artificially inflate these schedules and get as many teams into the playoff mix as possible. Michigan's not going to have any wins, but I do think Michigan is going to get knocked out of the equation when they go on the road. Turn your heads, Nebraska fans. Run and hide if you don't want to hear this, because I know you've heard good predictions for 20 years, and they basically haven't materialized. I think that in Nebraska in 2 weeks, Nebraska is going to run Michigan. It'll be a low-scoring game. Defenses will dominate, but I think the Cornhuskers are better than the Wolverines. So I don't know who else Michigan might lose to. Again, the schedule is so weak. But I think Michigan will be out of the mix for a playoff berth by the time we get to November for sure, and maybe by the time we get to mid-October. So that is my big takeaway. I don't see Michigan as a contender. I think Oklahoma and John Napier can be very, very good. I just don't know that they have, because of how rough the schedule is, the ability to get to 10-2. Let's talk about Arch Manning for a second. Texas, best win of the season so far. Credit to Ohio State. They beat Texas in Columbus last week. Arch Manning bounced back, I thought, pretty well. Threw for nearly 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, 20-yard scramble for a touchdown as well, 5 total touchdowns. Here's what I like about Arch. Arch makes the right decision. That is, he reads the field correctly. He still has accuracy issues. He still is missing too many throws. Sometimes he's trying to do too much. The interception that he threw, he got caught on a blitz. He threw the ball off his back foot to his receiver in the right corner of the end zone. Ball got picked. It should have been a play that he just ate. Should have taken the sack there and not thrown the ball up. And again, he has to get better on accuracy. But I thought that he is seeing the field well, and he is getting the ball delivered where it needs to go. I watched most of his game on Saturday against San Jose State. Now, you can say, as many people did, oh, my goodness, it's San Jose State. But I don't think you can react hyperbolically and say when you lose to the defending national champions on the road by 7, oh, my goodness, this is the most overhyped quarterback of all time, and then not acknowledge when you have a 5-touchdown performance no matter who it comes against. Now, next 2 games, I believe, are against UTEP and Sam Houston for Texas. Both of those should be wins, and Texas will be, if I'm not mistaken, then 3-1 going on the road at Florida when they begin their SEC schedule in earnest on the road in Gainesville. And let's pivot now. So I'm not worried about Texas. They started slow. Defense is still pretty good. I feel like Texas is still a playoff team. Let's talk about Florida. I said Texas is going to have to go to Florida in a couple of weeks. The situation for Florida is ominous. Billy Napier, the way they finished last season, made you think DJ Lagway and company, this is a team that has turned the corner. Billy Napier has built a culture of excellence, and it's taken a little bit of time to build the discipline, everything else. And then in one game, all of that went up in smoke. In particular, having a player spit in the face of another player right after what we saw happen in the Dallas and the Philly game, with 2 minutes left in the game and your team having a 1-point lead, to do that, I almost think you have to kick the kid off the team. I mean, honestly, I remember, and I know a lot of Gator fans do too, when the shoe got picked up and thrown, and if I remember correctly, that cost Florida a trip potentially to the SEC championship game. I believe I'm correct in that. It was a stupid harebrained move. To spit on someone when you are up 1 point and they have possession, and you've just had a decent play result, and you are theoretically about to take it down to the 2-minute warning, is so dumb that I'm not sure that person deserves to be on the football team. There are layers of stupidity that are so incredibly, profoundly imbecilic that I don't believe that person can continue to be on the football team. And then you go on and lose, okay? Florida might have, this is not me being hyperbolic, Florida might have the toughest schedule in college football this year. You have your usual 8 SEC games, and the Gators drew a tough 8. But then you also layer on top of it Miami and also Florida State. And then South Florida, which is supposed to be a win. That means South Florida may end up in the playoffs. We'll talk about Alex Golesh's team here in a moment. But that means that Florida effectively has 11 elite-level opponents in a 12-game schedule. And this is what Florida has in their next 4, guys. Right now, next 4 games, they go, and again, this is important, I think. Florida stares down the barrel. Again, starting 11 is up. I encourage you to go read it. I work hard on this thing. I burned the midnight oil legitimately to try to have it up early for you on Sunday. Before NFL games kick off, I try to have this thing up. Travel schedule sometimes makes that challenging. You understand. But next 4 games for Florida: at LSU, at Miami, Texas, at Texas A&M. Holy crap. So halfway through the season, Florida is going to have, in the next 4 games, at LSU, at Miami, Texas, at Texas A&M. Even a really good college football team would struggle to go 2-2 in those 4. And I'm not sure Florida is a very good football team. I think Florida at best is going to go 1-3 in those, and then the Gators are going to be sitting at 2-4 would be my prediction halfway through the season. They could be 1-5. On top of that, as if that were not enough, let me also hit you with they still, even after that 4-game stretch, Florida still has Georgia, at Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Florida State. I don't see any way that Florida is anything better than a 4-8 team in 2025. This being Billy Napier's third year. I believe I'm correct in this. I believe it is year 3 for Billy Napier. Dylan, will you look that up and confirm? I don't know how he's back, and I think we are in a position where it's basically waiting to see when Billy Napier is going to be let go. And he may be let go in exchange for the guy who came in and beat him, Alex Golesh, and South Florida, back-to-back wins for South Florida and the Bulls. Golesh, you may not know well, is the former offensive coordinator at the University of Tennessee when they were at their best with Hendon Hooker. He's had back-to-back 7-6 seasons at South Florida. He now has beaten Boise State and Florida back-to-back and now goes on the road against Miami. And if you look at the way that this thing is shaking out, my bad on Florida. This is year 4. I thought it was year 3. All the years run together. This is year 4 for Billy Napier. 6-7 in year 1, 5-7 in year 2, 8-5 in year 3. And again, I think probably 4-8 is a reasonable number. He is sitting right now at 20-20 at the University of Florida, 10-14 overall in conference games. So we will see how exactly Florida manifests itself here. But Alex Golesh may be the guy to take over. He's going to. I said I sent out a tweet. I think that he made himself $40 million or more with this win. Somebody's going to hire him. It may be the Florida Gators. If he goes on the road and beats Miami, it's one of the great all-time 3-game stretches for a non-power conference team that we have ever seen. So I give immense credit to Alex Golesh, to South Florida, for getting the win. So that is where we are. That is where sort of we analyze the South Florida universe. I had a funny meme. Maybe they can cut this. When Tom Brady's in the courtroom and he's like smiling as people come in. I love that meme. That was Kalen DeBoer watching Billy Napier take over the number 1 spot on the SEC hot seat rankings right now. Missouri, Kansas. One of the difficulties and downsides, I would say, of major college football expansion, maybe the biggest, is the loss of spectacular rivalry games like Missouri and Kansas. The border war, rooted in the history of the Civil War between Missouri and Kansas. These two sides do not like each other. They should play every year. They should play every year. As we move towards power conference teams, basically playing power conference teams more and more, SEC's going to 9 games, requiring that there be one power conference team on top of the 9. I think Missouri and Kansas, politicians should come together. It's a great rivalry game. It's cross-conference. I think they should play every year. Spectacular environment for this game. Congrats to Mizzou. They came back from a 15-point deficit, end up winning by 11 in Columbia. Set up for a game that I told you was going to be really a huge one in a couple of weeks, where South Carolina, undefeated, should be traveling to Missouri undefeated in a battle of the Columbias to find out who is going to take an early lead as a potential playoff team. And I told you this. And Alabama fans are already mad at me for making the prediction. Some of you Missouri fans may be mad at me for making the prediction. I think Missouri's going to beat Alabama on October 11th in Columbia. This Missouri team has got major issues on the defensive side of the ball. They got exposed some. They'll have to outscore a lot of teams, but I think offensively they are sound. I like what I saw from them. I think Missouri will beat Alabama. That game for the Battle of the Columbias against South Carolina is going to be a war. Can't wait to see how it's going to come out. Iowa State, another 50-plus yard field goal to beat Iowa. Hawkeye fans, I don't know how you watch this team. The offense, it doesn't matter what they do. They fire coordinators. They bring in new quarterbacks. They just can't ever actually score points. And I'm kicking myself because Iowa State, another great rivalry game for the Cy-Hawk Trophy. You should always bet the under in this game. I looked at it. I played around with it. I thought about making it one of my picks. I left it off to the side because I thought Iowa might actually be decent on the offensive side of the ball, and I got burned. But Matt Campbell's Iowa State team, nice win over Kansas State, although I knocked them down, and I'll tell you about it in a minute when I do my top 10. That win over Kansas State doesn't look as good as it used to, does it? Congratulations to Army for coming back from losing to Tarleton to going on the road and beating Kansas State. That was a heck of a win for the Army football program and shows good toughness that they could bounce back from an awful performance and put up a great performance to beat a Power 4 conference team like that. Kansas State's lucky they're not 0-3. The wheels have come off for Kansas State, somewhat like the wheels came off for Florida State last year after the loss in Ireland to Georgia Tech. Remember, Florida State went down and went 2-10. Kansas State, a 2-10 caliber team. I don't know that the Big 12 is good enough for that many teams to beat them, but Kansas State could very easily be 0-3. Remember, they were the favorite in that game against Iowa State. So congrats for that win. I haven't talked about it a ton yet, but let me mention it. Mississippi State has not had a major conference win in a long time. Jeff Lebby has taken over at this program. Since Mike Leach died, Mississippi State has been in a difficult period for the football program. This is a huge win. When the cowbells get clanging and Mississippi State can get up on you, they were able to get up 17-0. I think that Arizona State walked into a bit of got blindsided a bit. I don't know that they were prepared for the intensity that they found when they walked out on the field. To their credit, they fought back. They took control. Everybody's focusing on the last-second touchdown, and it was a hell of a play, and people will be talking about it in Starkville for a long time to come. But to me, the game was actually won when Arizona State wasn't able to punch the ball in for a touchdown on their final drive. They settled for a field goal from the 1-yard line. Now, you had the busted coverage that allowed the 58-yard touchdown, which should never happen. All those things are true. But Arizona State had to get in for a touchdown there. They didn't, and that left the door just a little bit cracked open to allow the situation to happen where all of this conspired to allow Mississippi State to get the win. And this is why I started off the OutKick show today saying SEC's now 8-2. They just beat the team that was the highest ranked in the entirety of the Big 12. And if you look at major conference matchups so far, SEC is now 8-2 against non-conference Power 4 teams. A lot of those wins have come in road neutral games. Okay? 8-2 against non-conference Power 4 teams. Big 10, 5-3. Okay, that's respectable. Best win of the season, I would argue, probably Ohio State over Kansas so far, over Texas so far. That's why I have Ohio State as my number one team. We'll talk about that in a sec. Big 12, 4-6, somewhat respectable. ACC is 2-9. ACC is 2-9, which is why that Alabama loss to FSU, which took on such narrative discussion, actually, I think for the Power 4 performances, basically the SEC has looked really good in the Power 4 conference games, but for the loss that Alabama had from Florida State. Alabama is the only team. Look, Ohio State, yes, they lost they beat Texas 14-7, but I don't think anybody watched that game and said, "Oh, Texas has no business as it could be considered a top college football team." Alabama losing to Florida State the way they did colored and characterized the SEC extensively and more substantially than I think that one individual game justified. Again, the conference, 8-2 overall, 5-3 in the Big 10. Big 12 is 4-6. ACC is 2-9. SEC is by far the best conference in the country right now. Now, if, and it's a big if A&M beats Notre Dame next week in one of the signature big games of the weekend in college football, look out. Because that very well would probably knock Notre Dame out of playoff contention, even if they finish 10-2. This is a must-win game for Notre Dame because the Notre Dame schedule is not that tough. And if you lose to A&M and if you lose to Miami, the only two teams that you play, I think it's going to be hard for you to get an at-large bid at 10-2, even if you ran the table. So effectively, might sound crazy, week 3 at Indiana in South Bend is effectively a playoff game for Notre Dame. So pay attention to this. It's over. One of the major talking points all offseason long was what would the impact be from Joey Aguilar leaving UCLA to join Tennessee after Nico asked for more money. Tennessee said, we're not paying you more money, and he walked and transferred to UCLA. Effectively, we got a quarterback trade. I never would have believed that we would have our answer on who got the better end of that deal. We do. Tennessee has won that trade by a massive amount. They are paying less money to Joey Aguilar, and I think they are getting better results than they would have if Nico were the quarterback. Tennessee put 72 on East Tennessee State. I know it's ETSU. It's the most points Tennessee scored in the SEC in the history of the program. But we'll wait and see what happens against Georgia, which I'll get to in a minute. Aguilar, 23 of 31, 288 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. A lot of the incompletions were flat-out drops. This guy is running Josh Heupel's offense at the highest level of performance since Hendon Hooker. They're moving faster than with Joe Milton. They're moving faster than with Nico last year. I don't know what the ceiling for Tennessee is, much like I don't know what the ceiling is for Oklahoma. But I can tell you we'll get a read on that with the game coming up this weekend against Georgia. Bulldogs going on the road in Knoxville, around a 6.5-point favorite. We'll break that down quite a bit. Georgia is basically the only team that Josh Heupel has not beaten. He's 2-1 against Alabama in his last 3. 2-1 against Florida in his last 3, has not beaten Kirby Smart in Georgia since he got to Knoxville. This is going to be his best opportunity. Not sure it's going to happen because this is a young Tennessee football team, particularly young at wide receiver. But I do think this is a sign that Tennessee is better off with Joey Aguilar than they would have been with Nico. On the flip side, UCLA is 0-2. They lost, got blown out, was it 43-10, I think, by Utah. Then they followed it up, losing 30-23. I was watching this game last night between UCLA and UNLV. Run the football, Dan Mullen. I don't know why you decided to get cute and throw the football late. Nico throws an interception, and UCLA now sitting at 0-2, unlikely to become bowl eligible. Nico left a better team with better coaches in a better conference with a much better fan base and a much more lucrative NIL future if you win for things that are worse in every one of those categories I just ran through. This is going to be seen as one of the worst NIL decisions that any player has made. And I feel bad for Nico for making the awful choice. Some people say, I don't know why you're talking about. Tennessee paid him a lot of money. Tennessee gave Nico over $6 million. They paid him to sit as a redshirt freshman $2 million. He got paid millions of dollars not to play. They paid him $2 million to play last season. They also paid him other dollars. I think he made close to $6 million. And then he said, I need more money. And Tennessee said the production is not there. And he and his team, his family, they walked. And now they're going to go to a team with no fans. Maybe they finally get their first win on Friday against New Mexico, I think is who they play, if I'm not mistaken. But they're going to be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. He's going to get the crap beaten out of him because they can't block for him. And this is going to go down in history as one of the worst decisions that any player has ever made. Speaking of worst decisions, Oklahoma State, maybe don't talk trash about Oregon. Dan Lanning has the ability to get his team motivated and find insults that is Saban-like in its incredible intensity. Credit to him. The Ducks, under the radar, I think they're, through 2 weeks, are 3 teams that look really good in the Big Ten. Ohio State, not surprisingly. Penn State. And Penn State fans might say, well, we haven't actually looked that good. I think that's fair. I think the competition level is very questionable. So far, it's hard to get your guys motivated. And then Oregon. And so we will see, was it September 27th? I believe Oregon goes on the road against Penn State. We will see in that game just how for real Oregon is and what to expect of that matchup for Penn State. But I think the Ducks should be big favorites. By the way, appreciate all of you who have been signing up for Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com, use code OutKick. You play $5, you get $50. You can play it anywhere in the country, just about 40-plus states. You can play in California, you can play in Texas, you can play in Georgia if you're feeling left out, my home state of Tennessee. You can also play in Florida. That $5, when you make your first pick, you get $50. I mean, there's over 13 million people that have signed up. All you have to do is pick more or less for players. We'll have a pick for you on Thursday. I'm going to try to pick NFL every single week for Prize Picks. And so all you have to do is go to prizepicks.com, use code OutKick. You get $50 when you play $5. Clemson, a lot of people talking about what happened there. They got down 16-0 to Troy, fought their way back to a double-digit win. That was a must-win game to stay in the playoff mix. I don't have a good read on what to expect of the Tigers. I really don't. I don't have any idea what the overall high-level ceiling is for this team or what the floor is, because LSU didn't look great, but it's not natural to have a big layover. Defense looked okay for LSU again, even though they were playing Louisiana Tech, I think. Okay, so again, breaking down everything we saw in college football, my top 10. Remember, I only rank teams based on what we have seen from them, not from what I expected to see from them. That means I give precedence to power conference wins. That means I give precedence to road neutral wins. That means I don't go in and say, well, I think this team is good, so I'm going to rank them high, even if they hadn't played that well. Georgia, for instance. Georgia goes out and whips Tennessee on Saturday in Knoxville. I'll be like, hey, these Georgia Bulldogs, they're pretty good. But so far with Marshall and with Austin Peay, have we seen anything that makes you think, boy, Georgia's really, really good? I haven't. So that's why, for instance, Georgia's not in my top 10 right now. Number 1 overall team, I've got Ohio State. Julian Sayin played fabulously well in the game this past weekend. The offense looked like it had firepower. I think you're going to see Ohio State continue to roll. But the win over Texas is, I believe, the single best win that any team has so far this season. So I bumped Ohio State up to 1. Dropped LSU down to 2. Clemson didn't look as good. LSU didn't look as good. I had them as my prior number 1 team. I'm dropping them to 2 based on looking at that performance. Miami, I kept at 3. I think the Hurricanes, based on their win over Notre Dame, I know they were playing Bethune-Cookman. It's hard to get a real read for Miami. We'll get a good test on them week 3 coming up on Saturday when South Florida, who is 2-0 with big wins over Boise State and Florida, as we discussed, is taking on Miami. I've got Oklahoma at 4. Again, I don't know what their ceiling is based on that 7-game stretch that I laid out for you, but they should be 5-0. The Sooners should. And John Napier is a difference maker at quarterback. The question is he enough of a difference maker to get them to 10-2 or better? I don't think so, but I could be wrong. I will say Oklahoma should have put away Michigan more than they did. This should have been not a close game remotely in the second half. They let the Wolverines hang around. They had a couple of bad plays, but I've got the Sooners at 4. Florida State at 5. Big drop back in quality of competition, but the beatdown they put on Alabama, I am keeping them in my top 5. South Florida, bumped them all the way up to 6. Again, as I mentioned, Boise State and Florida, as good of 2 wins as anybody in college football has right now. Mississippi State took them all the way up to 7. Beating Arizona State is one of the super quality wins so far this year. Again, not a ton of Power 4 conference outcomes. So I bumped Mississippi State up to 7. Got Auburn at 8. Tigers got the win over Ball State. That win over Baylor looked even, maybe a little bit better with Baylor beating SMU. I think, was it like the 14th or 15th, whatever it is, straight year that Baylor has beaten SMU in those matchups. That's pretty crazy. I've got Tennessee at 9. Like I said, hung 72, win over Syracuse. A little bit wobbly with Syracuse having to go to overtime against UConn. We don't know how good or bad Syracuse actually is, but again, a power conference win. And then I put Vandy in at 10. Knocked South Carolina out. We'll talk about this with the SEC rankings. Vandy outscored Virginia Tech 34-0 in the second half. I don't care who you are. If you go on the road in a place like Blacksburg, you're down double digits, and then you come out in the second half and outscore them 34-0. More power to you. That's one of the most impressive wins of the season, so I bumped the Commodores into the top 10. Now, SEC power rankings 1 to 16. I said, and I do mean this, I think it's possible the SEC 1 to 16 is better than it's ever been. I've got LSU at 1, Oklahoma at 2, Mississippi State at 3, Auburn at 4, Tennessee at 5, Vanderbilt at 6. Okay, so those are top 10 teams. That is my top 6 in the SEC. All right, I laid out why I have those teams ranked where I do. What about the rest of the SEC? I've got Texas at 7. I'm not going to penalize you massively because you happen to lose on the road against Ohio State. I haven't seen Texas notch a big win yet, but I'm not burying them because they happen to lose to a good team on the road. Alabama, I've got at 8. Same philosophy here. I'm not going to bury Alabama because they happen to go on the road against a power conference team and not look very good. That's normal in college football. South Carolina, I've got at 9. The win over Virginia Tech, candidly, does not look as good based on what we just saw Vanderbilt do to Virginia Tech. South Carolina won a close game in a neutral site scenario. Didn't necessarily look as good as maybe I expected against South Carolina State. Again, we're going to get a test, lots of tests in the SEC, but I've got South Carolina at 9. Ole Miss at 10. I thought they should have put Kentucky away, turned the ball over early. I did not think that Ole Miss looked as good as I thought they should have on the road against Kentucky, but you go on the road, you get a win in conference. There's no such thing as a bad conference road win. I've got Missouri at 11. Get the win over Kansas. Defense has me a little bit nervous, but that's why I've got them at 11. Georgia, I've got all the way down at 12. Show me. You're going to get plenty of opportunities to prove that you are really good. Marshall and Austin Peay, I haven't seen enough so far. Again, if Georgia goes out and whips Tennessee, they might go from 12 to 1. I adjust substantially based on results on the field, especially early in the season. A&M at 13. Defense has given up some points. You haven't played a real quality opponent yet, but defense has given up some points. Arkansas, similarly, haven't gotten a real read on them. You haven't been challenged yet. And then I dropped Kentucky to 15. Might be a little bit unkind, but they really got outgained for much of the game against Ole Miss. They won the turnover battle, and yet they still found a way to lose. And then I dropped Florida all the way to 16. So that is my breakdown of the week that was in college football. Every single Monday, we will have a big college football extravaganza for all of you. DBAP, unless you need to SBAP. Tuesday is the NFL day, so I will break down everything that happened in the Tuesday of the NFL. That's still to come. I will see you guys on Tuesday. This has been OutKick, the show. DBAP, unless you need to SBAP.